Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe. And for the next 15, 20 minutes or so, going to be talking to you about how to remove vocals and or create an a cappella track in Adobe Audition CC. And I've talked about this a lot. I've done tutorials on this, also going for the wet look today. My hair is wet, sorry about that. That this is something that people do, whether you're mashups, remixing. There's a lot of reasons to do this, and ultimately, it's something that you can do very easily inside of Audition. Having said that, it's entirely dependent on how the track is recorded. When records were mixed with vocals right in the center and kind of the band on either side of the left and right, it was much easier to pull the vocals out. In fact, I used an old school technique back in the day called A-B. This process that I'm going to show you today uses something called the center channel extractor, which not only preserves stereo, but gives you a little bit more control on how you account for the bleed and some of the issues that you might face when you have tracks on either side of the stereo field getting in the way. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And we've got a stereo waveform here. Now, this is actually a song that I recorded specifically for for an old school tutorial about this very process. And I'll give you a quick listen to this. Here we go, take a listen.
Well, once upon a time a cool lady friend of mine said he had a vocal to get rid of. So I told him that it wouldn't be a problem to remove as long as his vocal was in the middle of the stereo image.
I like to write songs that tell you things. In this case, it's telling you exactly what you need to make this process really work. So again, the key is the vocals, to remove them, need to be in the center. Now, on top of that, you also have the added complexity with today's music where often, and I do this because I mix a ton of music, you double the vocal, you triple, quadruple the vocal, you place it across left to right to kind of make it huge and stereoized. You add delay-based effects to add, again, more sort of pseudo-stereo things happening. Very difficult to remove when that's the case. Not to mention, a lot of things today happen in the center. Kick drum, snare drum, most of your beat info, with the exception of hi-hats, which are usually panned left to right. A lot of times it's like dead center. So a lot of that can ultimately be affected. But I'm going to show you how to do this. Give it a shot, try it out. If you're thinking about doing stuff where you're going to be mixing proper multi-track sessions and you want the flexibility to pull stuff out, keep some of these tips in mind. So let's go up to Effects, Stereo Imagery, and we're going to focus on this here called the Center Channel Extractor. All right? Let's pull this open. And we're going to start actually right in the preset menu. Always a good place to start, presets. I love presets. It's just a way to kind of, experience what these effects and things can do just with default settings or with preset default settings. And you'll notice that there's two sort of vocal removal options here. One's called karaoke, drop the vocals 20 dB. Another's called vocal remove. This one I think has a bit more of an aggressive removal. So I actually am going to choose this one. All right. Now, one other thing before we even play this back, notice again that you've got discrete amplitude controls for the center channel info, which in this particular preset has been dropped or attenuated by 40 decibels. You've also got side channel level control. So again, as you pull out the center, right, you're ultimately affecting sort of the balance and the overall level of the side channels. So you can account for some of that loss by making up some of the gain on the left and right. Crazy, crazy detail in here. You'll also notice that we have something in here called the frequency range. This is just that. This is going to allow you to customize the range of frequencies that are pulled out from the center channel. Now, someone like myself, who has a very low voice, I can go far beyond 120. Generally, though, when your vocals are mixed, you're not, there's probably not so much 60, 70, 80 hertz on the vocal. In fact, chances are there's almost next to none. So 100, 120, 140, that's kind of a good starting point. The key there is that even if you have bass guitar or bass frequency, right, or sub frequency key in the center, well, Subfrequency is going to be around 20, 40, 50 hertz. We're not touching any of that. So it'll stay there. Okay. So that's how you can retain the bass, retain some of the fundamental of the kick drum, but lift out, pull out those vocals. Okay. And similarly, you've got a frequency range on the high end, right? So 20K, this is letting everything go, or I should say, this is pulling everything out. So if you want to minimize the range, right? Typically your vocals are going to be, let's say between, in this case, 120 and, 8, 10K. Yes, there is presence and sparkle and other things in 10, 11, 12, 14K on a voice. But, there might be other centered elements in the high end. Maybe the hi-hat is in the center. So if you pull out everything up to 20K, all those hi-hat sounds, they're going to be gone too. So as you decrease that, it's going to minimize the frequency range that it's pulling out from the center. So let's go ahead and start with this vocal remove preset. Let's turn it off first, just to kind of hear what it does by default. I'll start playback and then I'll kick it in and you'll hear what it does. Take a listen.
Well, once upon a time a cool lady friend of mine. Yes, it did. As long as his vocal was in the middle of the stereo.
Now, what do we notice happened there? It pulled out all of the drums because for whatever reason on this particular recording, the drums are in mono and they're primarily in the center, okay? So I use this as an example to show you that what gets mixed into the center is also affected by this. Now, having said that, let me go ahead and I'm going to loop this. So you're going to get to hear this song over and over again. And I'm going to start playing around with some of those frequency ranges as well as the center channel level first to hear how much we can retain and how much we can attenuate. All right, let's take a listen again. I'm going to turn it on. Actually, I'll start it with it off and then I'll kick it in. And let me just bring the center channel level back to 0, approximately 0. Okay, here we go.
Well, once upon a time a cool lady friend of mine said he had a vocal to get free, yes it did. So I told him that it wouldn't be a problem to remove as long as his vocal was in the middle. Yes it did.
Now, what you're also hearing, you see I noticed I brought back a little bit of the drums in there. Notice that all the background vocals, yes, he did, those are panned left and right. So all the backgrounds are retained. That's how that works. Now, you'll notice also as I was playing around with some of the frequencies, as I lowered the top end of the range here, it brought back a little bit of the sparkle. It also revealed a little bit of the kind of some of the glottal and sibilance, not the bad sibilance, but the good sort of sparkly sounds of the voice. That's fine. It brought back a little bit of presence. And you'll see that I also increased the side channel levels to kind of give that overall track a bit more of a boost, okay? Now, this is the default, basically. All we really did was change this high-end range. Now, if you go into discrimination, don't discriminate. We're talking about frequencies here, though it's okay. Where you can see crossover bleed, phase discrimination, amplitude bandwidth, spectral decay. Now you have even more control over how it's kind of accounting for a lot of the sound and frequency and bleed of content that's in that same center range. So this gets very, very technical very, very quickly if you want it to be. You never have to go over here. This is why we devise these presets for you. But I'm going to play this again. I should really be in headphones. I can't reach them to sort of get a better idea of what's happening sonically. So let me just do that real fast. I'll play the game with you. Turn off my speakers here. And I'm going to loop this, and I'm just going to start messing about with some of these, and you'll kind of hear what they're doing as I'm doing it. Take a listen. If you're in headphones, too, this should sound pretty cool.
Yes, it did.
So you can see right there as I dropped that phase discrimination by, fractions of a degree, you start bringing back some of the info that was probably just left or right of center, things like the snare and such, just to kind of improve the track. I didn't move it much, but again, we're talking, whoops, I'm trying to get vertical here. We're trying to, very fractional degrees of change here, right? There's also effects on here, which are bouncing in stereo.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Now the spectral decay, again, this is going to sort of attenuate with a sort of smoother result, potentially, not often, not always, some of that center channel stuff that's being removed. A very minimal amount of spectral decay is probably all you'll ever need if you're going to dive into this in the first place. But, if we start from where we began here.
Well, once upon a time, a cool lady friend of mine said, yes, it did.
Okay, and the more we remove of this, here's the other technique. Now, as someone who makes music, let's say I get the vocals out of here, but again, I'm kind of losing some of the drums, but notice the bass is in there. And by the way, let's go back to this extraction because I want to show you what happens. We heard what happens when I drop the high frequency. Let's see what happens when I go lower so that it starts to pull those bass frequencies out too. Check this out. Just watch this, and then I'll talk about the adding back in sound. Hold on.
Yes, it did.
So now all the bass is gone, right? All gone because we're blasting away everything from 36 hertz to 9K. Don't need to do that. There's no vocals down there. Neither Barry White nor I are singing at 36 or 40 hertz, okay? So that's why when we wind it back and we bring it back up to, like I said, 100, 120.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. I mean, I can probably even go closer to 200. Now, 200 is a weird range. Again, you don't want to necessarily preserve 200, but it's going to let a lot of that bass and sub frequency just remain, just be, and that's what you want. What I was saying was, now after you do this, a very common technique is to just add some of the instruments back. It's legit. And if you're recording your stuff or you're taking a commercial track, and we'll talk about this in just a second here, it's very easy to replace drums, right? So all is not lost. You pull the vocals out, now you've got drums. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this, and you'll see why in just a minute, and hear what we've got here again.
Yes, it did.
Okay, so now we've got it with the vocals removed. Now I happen to duplicate this song. Let's go back into the same filter here, and let's go ahead and choose the acapella, okay? So again, this is now doing the opposite, right? That was vocal removal. This is vocal preservation, and it's going to attenuate all of the side channel information, which you can see, right in the preset itself. Side channel levels, minus 48 dB. Center channel, we're at 0. We're leaving the center where it is, okay? And now, again, you've got this frequency range thing. So here's an example where, because if we're trying to preserve vocals, we may want to go a little bit lower, right? Not that there's going to be any vocal content below 115 hertz, but if there is bass in that range, maybe we don't want that, okay? So let's just take a listen and see what this does.
Well, once upon a time, a cool lady friend of mine said he had a vocal to get rid of. So I told him that it wouldn't be a problem to remove, as long as his vocal was in the middle of the stereo image.
Okay. So yeah, no bass issue there, starting at 115. Here now, we're getting a lot of that snare drum, of course, because it's dead center. Now, unfortunately, there's really just not much you can do about that. We could try playing around with some of the crossover bleed and this phase discrimination setting. I'm going to tell you right now, you're probably going to be stuck with a bit of that. But in terms of a remix, right, in terms of a mashup, it kind of doesn't matter, right? You've got other things happening, whether it's in a breakdown section, whether it's in a transition or a change. it's entirely dependent on how the track was recorded. So there's a little bit that we can maybe do, but ultimately we're going to have a little bit of that. Now, what we can do is start cutting down the high end because there's a lot of snap and crackle from those drums.
Once upon a time, a cool lady friend of mine said he had a vocal to get rid of. So I told him that it wouldn't be a problem to remove, as long as his vocal was in the middle of the stereo image.
Now you can hear the vocals sound a little bit more mid-rangey because we're cutting off the high end. Remember, there's a lot of goodness, 8K, 9K, 10K, 12K, right? That's why singers use condenser microphones to preserve all of that high end. So if you go much below 8K, it's not going to be the most desirable sound. Having said that, going back 15 years ago, Fatboy Slim, when they did a lot of their early remixes, now they didn't use this. This wasn't out at the time, or maybe it just was. But you notice a lot of those vocal extractions, which were largely A-B, the voices were kind of mid-rangey. Because when you do that, then you're minimizing that range, and that works really nicely. It's kind of kind of like the telephone voice thing in a remix, right? That's like not uncommon. Let's go back to the beginning here.
Once upon a time, a cool lady friend of mine said he had a vocal to get
Now I've completely eliminated all the bass by going up to like 179.
rid of. So I told him that it wouldn't be a problem to remove, as long as his vocal was in the middle.
Before,
Said he had a vocal to get rid of. So I told him that it wouldn't be a problem to remove, as long as his vocal was in the middle of the stereo image.
okay? So that is vocal removal and a cappella creation with audio files. Now, I made this. I wanted to show you just two quick examples of something that I didn't make that is legit music from today. So this track here, which is titled Cloud9, this was actually a song that I licensed from one of our plugin partners, Audio Network. You can find them at audionetwork.com. This is a track called Cloud9, recorded today. Modern recording, modern mixing. You can see by the waveform, it's a very modern looking mastered mix. And what's cool about this is that this is kind of mixed in a slightly more traditional way, which means that you have a little bit more flexibility when trying to pull vocals out or retain the vocals. So let's just play this back, and then I'm going to put on some presets here. We'll start with the vocal remove one first, all right? So let's take a listen here.
Blue skies all the way. We laugh, we joke, we you and I.
You can see this is very nicely, though, preserving the drums because they're not in the center. They're kind of slightly off left and right. We're hearing the beat, we're hearing the percussion, but the vocals are gone.
So high, so precious.
Those are backgrounds. All backgrounds. I didn't stage this. I literally downloaded this the other day. I thought this could sound, listening to it in headphones, going, oh, this will probably work great. Holy, the whole vocal's gone and the music is all there. This is an example of a 2016, 2017 cut, mixed, mastered, modern day stuff. It just works, right? And then if we go into the breakdown here,
Color me in brown.
I could do my own little. Thanks for joining me, Terry White. Thanks all of you for joining me today on the Adobe CC Video and Audio channel.
Happiness is life.
Happiness is life. She couldn't be more correct. All right? Craziness. That's with the preset. I didn't even touch it. By the way, the person who inspired me to embrace presets and preset goodness, Mr. Terry White. Check him out at terrywhite.com. Okay, so now that's, again, the vocal removal. Let's try the acapella. Let's see what this does. And maybe we'll start here right at this kind of after the breakdown, all right? So we'll start with it off.
Color me in bright light. Taste the night upon our lips. Sweetness like a rainbow's kiss. Happiness is life.
Now, as I said before, we've got guitar and stuff in there, so I rolled back the high end to 8K. It's still in there. We're hearing a little bit of the snap of the percussion. And as I go towards 7K, it gets a bit more mid-rangey. But again, we preserve more of just the vocal. Notice I brought the start frequency to 190 hertz, so there's no bass in there, and it's really just vocal, and it's pretty awesome.
My love to grow old. Living so high, living on that line, so precise, no divine, living on that line.
Okay, so here you see I went from a 5-something degrees to now I'm down, 3.9. Really isolating those vocals a bit more. They're getting a little phasey, but if we're doing a mashup, man, you're going to throw some delay on there. You're going to throw effects on there. You're going to throw some on there. You're going to mask all those things. That's the joy of being able to do this. It's not perfect. If you want perfect, get the multi-track. But this very quickly allows you to do some pretty cool things. So again, here's the before.
So high, living on that line, so precise, no divine, living on that line.
Okay? So, my friends, that's kind of, that's it in a nutshell. That's removing vocals and creating acapellas. Thanks again for joining me. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.